I'm sorry, so sorry, not sorry. I'm sorry, not sorry. Oops, I'm sorry. So sorry, not sorry. I'm sorry, not sorry. Oops, I'm sorry. So sorry, not sorry. I'm sorry, not sorry. So sorry. I'm sorry, not sorry.
Welcome to the Unapologetic Love Podcast. I'm your host, Joy, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Millie and Nick, a polyamorous couple and relationship coaches based in Toronto, Canada. Millie and Nick are the founders of Decolonizing Love, a social enterprise advocating for polyamory through critical theory lens. Their viral TikTok channel and advocacy work have been featured internationally. Today, we'll be discussing their personal experiences with polyamory, their advocacy work, and their advice for those exploring non-monogamous relationships. Let's dive in.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
You are welcome. Thank you for coming. Can you share with us your personal experiences and journey with polyamory and how you came to identify as polyamorous?
Sure. I began my polyamory journey in Kenya. I am originally from Kenya. I'm mixed Kenyan. I'm from 4 different tribes. I'm part of the Maasai, Nandi, and the Darubo tribe. I lived for a while in the Maasai territory on the outskirts of Nairobi, where I got to witness polygamous society. And it's a lot different from how some people imagine it. It is not a structure where women are oppressed through. For example, you're allowed to have boyfriends and lovers if you're a Maasai woman, which you do. If somebody comes and if a husband comes home to the village and sees a spear in front of his wife's hut, that means she has a boyfriend and not to disturb her. And they would go out usually after the season and go on a Girls Gone Wild trip to the nearest city or village. And that's all part of Maasai polygamous society. But a lot of Kenyans have assimilated into our former British colonizers' ideas of marriage and love. And especially those who live inside the capital city, Nairobi. And a lot of my family had assimilated into Western culture. So I got to witness the differences between those who kept to our traditional ways of life and then those who had assimilated, and compare and contrast. And I would see a lot of issues with people who had assimilated. There's a lot of divorces. There's a lot of cheating. And I remember going to an uncle's 3rd wedding after his 3rd divorce and hearing him talk about how he would be with his new wife forever and the vows. And I was looking at my family, but he said that a couple of years ago. How are we all pretending this is what's going to happen? This is ridiculous. And that's when I was like, I think rather than this culture which tries to suppress its true self, I prefer the honesty of my traditional cultures. And I think we lost something, and I would rather be honest about who I am. And I prefer my traditional ways of culture. And that's how I became basically non-monogamous. And I've never, ever been monogamous my entire life.
That's nice. What about you, Nick?
My journey is probably not as, it doesn't go as far back as Millie. I think, I met Millie close to 13 years now in Montreal. We had met at an event on Baptiste Day. Wait, no.
Couch surfing, yes. You're teaching me French.
Oh yeah, couch surfing. No, but what was
Bastille
it?
Day.
Bastille Day.
Revolutionary love.
Bastille Day. I don't know why I think met at the Jean-Baptiste building, but it was on Bastille Day, so that's why I was confused. And so then probably within a month of dating, Millie brought up the idea of polyamory and whether I'd be open to that. And she had mentioned that she tried with her ex, didn't work out, but this is something that she's committed to doing and she really wants to do. And if we were going to end up being serious, she wanted to be able to do that with me. And at the beginning, I thought that was so cool. I didn't even know that was an option. And I think for a lot of people don't know that's actually an option that you can do. I was like, oh, great. And I got really excited at first. And I think like most men would probably get excited of the fact that their partner, and I'm speaking from a very heterosexual, perspective, which is my perspective. It's just that, it's like they would be really thrilled the fact that, oh, I can date other women, great. But I think the years that passed by, it was really understanding a little deeper on the responsibilities required with the whole aspect of non-monogamy. And I think that was really part of the journey, and it was part of this unlearning journey for me, where I had to deconstruct, detox from a lot of patriarchal views, a lot of very mononormative views. And that's been, and 13 years later, here we are actually being polyeducators.
That's so awesome. Millie, you kind of touched on this a little bit. How have your individual backgrounds and identities shaped your perspectives and approach to non-monogamy?
Well, I come from indigenous African tribes, and the way that they view romantic love, the way that society is organized, is very different from modern Western culture and capitalist cultures. Thankfully, for a lot of rural Africa, capitalism hasn't penetrated as much, and neither has the state. So people are able to still operate in very traditional ways. And one of the ways that, because of living in a country where if you are in the rural areas, you're still much dependent on your community. You cannot depend on the state. So community is the most important thing inside where I'm from. And that has definitely shaped the way that I look at love, because I grew up not understanding why whenever I read like Western movies or read books, I'd be like, why is it always about romantic love? Why is everything got to be there? What about their friends? What are they doing around their neighbors? How are they? And I never understood that until I moved to the West when I was a teenager. And I was like, oh, they don't have community. They don't know their neighbors' names. That's just normal. So they're obsessed with it. There's nothing else to fulfill them. That's it for them. I approach non-monogamy and my romantic experiences from from a perspective of knowing that it's one part of who I am, and it should not be all that, and that all the other aspects also matter. And also, I feel that white polyamory communities and Western polyamory communities tend to intersect with a lot of kink communities, because, and once again, so much of Western view of things is when it comes to romance, is also tends to be very sex-based. Living in Toronto, I began an organization for only people of color who are polyamorous. And it was interesting when I would go to one polyamory where the organizers were white, and my own polyamory organization. And the difference was that when it came to ours, people talked more about community. Well, social justice was a very important conversation about what it means to be a racialized person living inside the still colonial state that is Canada. And it was a very, very different vibe, friendlier, more communal. That's the ways that my background and being also a racialized person here has affected how I view non-monogamy.
And for me, very, very, very different, but still appearing or ending up in the same place is being a Quebecer, born and raised in Quebec. I think really having that notion and understanding of the history of Quebec and how it was really controlled a lot by the church back in the early 1900s, actually even before then. And up until the 1960s, the church had a really strong hold on a lot of cultural things, notions about relationship, notions about marriage. And in the 1960s, there was this time called the Quiet Revolution, where there was the separation of church and state, and where it was such a pivotal moment for a lot of Quebecers, because that's where a lot of us started to unlearn a lot of the things that the church did. And we saw basically the church as a very colonial pressure on us.
English colonial.
English colonial. I have to mention English colonial. We were colonizers as well, but it was really kind of like that British or that Christian colonial mindset. And so really understanding how that impacts our view of family, our view of community, our view of love, it's made me wonder about, on a broader level, on a more kind of world level, how has colonization affected culturally, all of us and our mindset on love. And this is like how I tie in a little bit my history about how I saw that effect happen in Quebec, and it definitely probably has an effect on other populations around the world.
And what are some of the challenges that you face coming out as polyamorous to your friends and family, and how did you navigate those challenges and find support?
I can't say that I've actually had much challenges, to be honest. I think I'm very lucky in my
Yes.
background. I'm very lucky to come from the Kikuyu tribe, which is my mom's main tribe.
Yeah.
And the Kikuyu tribe are matriarchy in origin, and they love strong women who.
Do you want to say what you said?
Yeah, I will. My mom, when I came out as polyamorous, she was all like, "Oh, you think you're original? Your cousin has 2 husbands." That was my mom's answer. Your mom she's like, your cousin has 1 white husband and 1 black husband. You know, she's been like this her entire life. And I was like, oh, and which out of all the tribes to do this, and even when I would talk to other East Africans, like talk to a Sudanese man about polyamory, he's like, Millie, you're so Kenyan. It's I feel very lucky to come from tribes that love strong women and support our freedom and never clip our wings, and actually like it when we are able to think outside the box. They encourage that in us. And in my tribe, the Kikuyu tribe specifically, there's multiple ways to be in relationships with other people. So polygamy, we're a polygamous society, but we also allow and accept monogamy. If you're monogamous, that's who you are. But you can also have self-marriage, which no other tribe has. So it's only for women who are allowed. But my tribe is the only one where, you can marry yourself as a woman. And 2 of my aunts married themselves. And they had an official ceremony. They had bridesmaid, and they, dedicated to love themselves forever. And they didn't want to be with anybody. They were like, they would have lovers, but they never wanted to live with a lover or be committed to somebody else. Or first they committed to themselves, and that's what they wanted to do. And there's also sister wives into the tribe. So for my tribe, what matters is figure out who you are, and we encourage you to go and explore yourself, and then come back and tell us who we are and what your gift is as a community, and we're going to celebrate that about you. And I'm feel very blessed that we have that. I actually would love if one of my things I really want a birth return to Africa, where how in Israel all Jews around the world are allowed to go back to Israel. I would love it if we had a similar program in Africa where African Americans in the diaspora could be like, we want to figure out who we are. We lost things, but then I'll be like, come and explore all the tribes. Figure out which one you are. You want to join my tribe? This is our sales pitch. How awesome we are. Well, the more the merrier. We just increase people. But to finalize your question, also when it came to my friends, I've always had queer activist friends. Those are the people I gravitated towards, who were all non-monogamous. So I never felt a coming out or struggle around this.
I would say that there were a few friends actually that it's not that they struggled. I think, it's like the struggle. First of all, I had a very different experience with my family. And, I think it's because it's this notion that it's polyamory. There's this myth that polyamory is only about sex. And I've had comments, especially from my family, where that's your business. I don't want to hear about it. Like, that's dirty. That's taboo. You know what I mean? And it's about educating family and saying, no, this is not really about sex. This is more than that. This is about, relationships, loving romantic relationships. And I want to be able to bring partners in the future for Christmas or for any other holiday that we celebrate. And so I think, from a family point of view, there were certain challenges, and it was just about being really, really patient with them, because I think ideally we want our friends and our family to accept us who we are, right off the bat. But it's a process for everybody as well to really make sense of it and understand it, especially when you have friends and family that really love you a lot and want the best for you. And they're coming from a place of really, they're trying to protect you or trying to make sure that you're not making a wrong decision. And so it's really being a little bit more understanding about where they're coming from as well. It's been a process, but now I think they're at a place where there's this acceptance, and they've met all my partners. So I mean, that's beautiful. And I think on the friend aspect, yes, like Millie said, we have a community, a circle of friends that is very open.
And most of our friends are polyamorous too.
And most of our friends are poly, and some switch to polyamory
because of us.
Because they got to see a model, and it just goes to show that we have all these models or healthy models of monogamy, and that's why everybody thinks that monogamy works, but no healthy models of polyamory, or as much. It's happening more and more, which is great, but I think we'll have like this person that they know, not just on TV or in an article. I think it becomes more real for them, and they get to see. But I think it's back to kind of the friends, and the challenge with the friends was really teaching them how to dismantle couple privilege and hierarchy. I think, a perfect example is we had a friend, this was years ago. Now all of our friends are totally cool. But we had a friend where they would invite me to a party, and they would expect me to invite Millie, and just said, oh, and bring Millie too. But that comes from a very, mononormative lens. It's like you automatically expect that Millie's going to be my plus one. Whereas I have other partners. And if you want to invite Millie, if you want them there, ask her yourself, call her up. I might bring my other partner or other partners. It's really educating your friend group, those that are not polyamorous, to think in this way, to make it a little bit more inclusive for all partners, and really have that hierarchical mindset where it's automatically going to be Millie.
How do you navigate and manage feelings of jealousy or other emotions in your relationship? Do you guys experience jealousy?
Yeah, you do experience jealousy, but I think it's the way that people who are polyamorous view jealousy is different from the way compulsive monogamy culture teaches about how you're supposed to deal with jealousy. So with compulsive monogamy culture, jealousy is the end of the story. It's the full stop. It's the period. Now you got to do that thing to stop what you were doing that made that person feel jealous. Oh, were you watching that girl? Stop looking at her.
I don't want you seeing your friend that I'm threatened by.
Exactly. Right? They don't introspect beyond that. Whilst for polyamory, jealousy is the beginning of a conversation. Jealousy is a teacher. It's a road now into something that's going in that needs to be fixed. And it could be any. It could be a teacher that's telling you that actually there is something maybe in your relationship that needs feeding. Maybe you need some reassurance of your relationship or commitment, or you need more dates. Or it could be there's something underneath going on around self-worth, about why did this person trigger you if your relationship is secure? Are there abandonment issues? What is it telling us, this jealousy? And let's work together to help fix that so that you feel secure. This doesn't bother you or threaten you anymore. And I think the thing is, when it comes to other types of emotions, is that we've learned as a society to be like, oh, if you're angry, we can't be like, oh, you're an angry person. You're like, we need to kind of deal with that. But if you're jealous, we're like, person, but I'm like, no, that means you got to deal with something. Every negative emotion is about something. That's how we view jealousy.
I just want to add one thing to that, is that it's like sometimes a lot of people think that, okay, once I heal myself, or once I figure out the root cause of my jealousy, the jealousy is going to be I'm never going to feel jealous again. And that's not always the reality. Sometimes there's always going to be a little sting. There's always going to be a little jealousy there. And it's not about erasing it. If that happens, great. Like, that's amazing. But it's about learning to discuss it, learning to manage it.
And accept your jealousy.
Accept it. Being passionate, just accepting that, you get jealous sometimes. And polyamorous people, non-monogamous people get jealous. Like, that is a completely normal thing. And not to demonize it as much. But as Millie said, make it the introduction of a discussion.
I like to sit with my jealousy and be like, what do you need? What is it trying to tell me? I see it as a friend, and I'm very comfortable. And the more you do that, the more honestly, it's just, if I ever feel it, it's I haven't really honestly felt in years very intense jealousy, but it's always telling me something.
Right. I know for me personally, like my jealousy generally comes from my abandonment issues. And I know that any partners that I get, any partners that are in my life, need to understand that. And I you know, like, I like to be not really like babied or coddled, but just to feel like I'm understood. Like, I'm really good at working through my own emotions. I don't really need that, but like I find that there's only issues when it's kind of like when my feelings are being pushed to the side. Oh, well, you knew what you were getting yourself into, so you shouldn't be jealous. But you can't tell me what I shouldn't be. I feel this feeling, and now I want to have a. Can we talk about it? I think a lot of people, I think the reason that dealing with jealousy can be so hard is because it's minimized. The reason you're feeling this feeling is minimized. And it may not be a big issue to the other person, but if your partner's feeling something, then it's a big issue.
And I want to say that that is a very common behavior of cishet men.
Yeah, in polyamory sometimes.
In polyamory, where they try to minimize their jealousy because they want to appear like cool, nothing's bothering me, like I'm chill. And when you minimize or suppress that jealousy, it comes out in another shape or form.
And explodes.
I think, cis men are very good at, first of all, like I've known a lot of cis men who've been like, oh, there shouldn't be, someone who's polyamorous obviously is a person who doesn't get jealous. They're the ones to be like, telling you, your jealous emotions, that's kind of weird that you've been feeling, that's polyamory. You should just, whatever, accept it, whatever is going on. But they also suppress it within themselves, and both are toxic.
They suppress it because that's an emotion that they don't want to deal with. They don't want to come to terms with that. It's okay. It happens.
I think if you're in a position where you already know what you need when you are jealous, and you can identify what you need and you can communicate with your partner, those things, that's already half of the battle, or 80% of the battle, understanding what you need for security. And that's
right.
First step we tell people in our peer session calls. It's about, first of all, sit with that jealousy, or sit with yourself and really understand what are the minimal viable things that you need in order to feel secure. And
but also, where are you feeling it? Because a lot of people don't even know where they're feeling in their bodies. Where is it? Where in is your breathing?
Yes.
Is it your shoulders? Where is it coming?
I've never thought to ask myself that either.
That is yes, that is really to take a very somatic therapy approach, really understanding that also makes you understand what your response is, your trauma response. Well, not really a trauma response, but what it is.
It is a trauma response.
Are you more of a fight or flight person? Are you more of a freeze? Are you more of a fawn person? And really understanding that can also help you identify what you need in order to soothe yourself. And it's like that can be something you can communicate with your partner. Obviously, it's like we shouldn't depend 100% on our partner to soothe us. It should be us that knows how to manage. But if there's some things that our partner can do and they're willing to do, by all means, that's amazing.
But also, I think it's also for yourself to know where your triggers are. So if, for example, it makes you breathe heavier, learn to control your breath when you're jealous will help you out.
Yes.
And also tend to also have some very cliche ways of, and this is very heteronormative, but men tend to be very aggressive when they're jealous. A lot of women tend to be sad and depressed when they're jealous. So, also learning those things and, how it shows up in you, you can also learn how to counter it. Whenever you're jealous, just sit, where is it in your body? How is it expressed? Help teach you a lot.
Right. When I tell you I'm really good at managing my emotions, but when I notice that when I don't feel like my partner, whoever it is, understands me, that's where it doesn't even have to be you agree with me, but if I don't feel like they understand me, that's when it goes to another level. I just want to be understood. Okay, I can see how that makes you feel.
What you just said is super important in any relationship.
Any
relationship. Be understood, to be heard. And those magic words, I can understand how that makes you feel.
Can you explain the concept of decolonizing love and how it's related to non-monogamy?
So I was introduced to Decolonizing Love by the writer Junot Diaz, and in his keynote speech at the 2012 Basin Race Conference. He said, I'm just going to read it out. We're never going to get anywhere as long as our economies of attraction continue to resemble more or less the economies of attraction of white supremacy. We all have a blind spot shaped around our privilege, shaped exactly like us. We're not going to get free until we practice a decolonial love. For me, non-monogamy is just one element of decolonizing the worldviews that we're taught about how to practice love by colonizers. It's one of the most fundamental because heteronormative nuclear families ensure isolation from community. And it's community that can best withstand and fight capitalism and empire. Isolation and just being concerned with your family makes us more vulnerable. And compulsory monogamy culture mirrors capitalism in its encouragement of possessiveness and seeing love as scarce. So teaching love as abundant and rooted in freedom is radical. Love is the ethic that underpins all activism, hence decolonizing love.
I like what you said about us viewing love as abundant, because when you have something in abundance, you don't have that fear of losing it.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember someone telling me this story of someone, and it was in terms of love, someone knocking at the door and you're starving, you're in the house starving, and they're saying, do whatever I want you to do and I'll offer you this pizza. You'll have a lifetime's worth of pizza. You're going to take the pizza and you're going to do it. But if you have an abundance of food, when they show up at the door, you're going to turn them away. That even goes back to jealousy. Like if there is an abundance of something, because jealousy stems from abandonment issues or other issues where you feel like you're going to lose your partner. But if you know that you have love in abundance, then you, like you said, jealousy is going to be there, but it's just not going to be so loud, and it's not going to be a huge problem.
And I want to really highlight what does that abundance look like, because I just had a thought. We did a video recently on community and how important community is, and how because of capitalism and this idea or this promise in the nuclear family and of love and romance, it takes us away from community, and we have this thought that it's really that person that is the one is going to be everything for us and is going to, and it almost like isolates us, or we lose community because of that. And this element of jealousy or this abandonment becomes that much more important for us, or the alert in our brain becomes that much more louder when we risk losing the person that represents our entire community, and we fall to shambles, just the thought of losing that person. And if we find a way back to this mindset where we have community, we have a person to go to for different types of things, then that abandonment with that one person becomes less dire. We end up having more of an acceptance of the fact that if the relationship doesn't work out, it's more okay. I'm going to be okay.
Right.
And that was, so that we posted that video about a week ago, and that was one of my most popular videos in the last couple months. And it was I didn't expect that, because I was like, I don't know how this is going to, coming from Kenya and coming from, I was like, indigenous knowledge, you're always not sure how Western people will take certain ideas. And I did not expect it. And I thought, I don't know how much people will resonate with the idea of how, because I kept thinking to myself, why are people so clawing onto hierarchy? It's so weird to me. It's so obvious that it's wrong. And it made me, and I realized indigenous societies don't have hierarchy. We have community. That's why you can't be hierarchical in a small community. It's just not acceptable. But when I said, oh yeah, if you had more community, you'd probably be less hierarchical. You'd probably be less starved for love of community. And so many people resonated with that, and that was so beautiful to see that. Regardless of the fact that even people have been born in this culture, is that there's a strong human need to come back to community. And so I think colonizing love is this thing that resonates with so many people, because everyone in the world's been colonized. The first people to colonize were actually Italians through the Christian church.
Sorry,
y'all did it. Anyway, and I used to have Decolonizing Love as a workshop at the beginning. And it was a workshop that I used to give for my BIPOC group. And it was a workshop that I stopped doing it because I had other jobs and also like burnt out a little bit. But everyone kept on messaging me back, can you please bring back Decolonize in Love, the workshop? And I was like, you know what, I'm doing? I'm going to put it online for y'all, so y'all can stop asking, but then ended up being this thing, this whirlwind. And I was like, this is awesome. And then I was like, it's supposed to be a message for everybody and not just for this small group.
That's awesome. So how do you use critical theory to analyze and critique traditional relationship structures? And what are some key insights that have emerged from this approach?
I use all types of critical, I'm an activist from training. I've been an activist pretty much my entire life. My dad was a diplomat, and when I was 3 years old, we actually lived for a while as a child, I lived in Israel, and then we lived in Cambodia for a while. So I lived there after the Khmer Rouge War. And so for me, activism is very much in my blood and how I just approach life in general. When I'm looking at non-monogamy and relationship practices, I use race theory to discuss sexual racism. I use disability and body positivity movement to discuss desirability politics. I use decolonizing and decolonial liberation theory, particularly around indigeneity, to discuss assimilation into Christian patriarchy. And there's so many insights when you begin to study how sex, romantic love, and relationality from a structuralist point of view. But to me, the biggest insight was how thoroughly colonialism and white supremacy has touched everything, and how much people aren't aware that they're in the matrix. And the disorders abound, and there's so much dissatisfaction within the dating culture. And why did things go wrong? How did things go wrong? And because everyone's feeling it, everyone's reacting to something, but people don't know how we got here. And I take all that I've learned and I sort of apply it because I'm a nerd and I'm always like reading, and I'm interested in things like how Foucault talks about how all that power is about sex, and all that sex is about power, and I like to go back and be like, part of the reasons why colonialism, white supremacy exists is to how to control our bodies. How they've done things like be like, you can't marry this person, you can only be in this sort of household, in this kind of family structure, these races, these bodies are good, these bodies are bad, the red bodies, the body matters quite a lot to colonialism and to white. So let's talk about the relationship practices around the body. And marriage and relationships and romantic love have not been introspected enough, and I think this is the new revolution. I think we had it around heteronormativity. We know we've had the last 30 years where we've been doing a good job of unpacking heteronormativity, and I think it's now time for mononormativity to be unpacked, and that's where we're at right now.
And for me, being a cishet man and coming from a very patriarchal background, I personally like to see how patriarchy intersects with all this as well. I dive deep into, we spoke a little bit about how like cishet men are most likely to suppress their jealousy or to display anger. I also like to question things. In the polyamorous community, there's a lot of talk about OPP, which stands for one penis policy. And this is a very common thing where men, they value, it's relationships between a penis and a vagina, but they devalue relationships between two women. And so that's why they're more okay with their partner being with other women. And it's kind of really challenging that aspect as well with a lot of these types of men. And we also have another video on, triads and this whole idea of unicorn hunting for these bisexual women, and how patriarchy fits into that desire and that model. And so it's really that's the lens I take with my own experiences as well. It's really trying to see how that influences a lot of non-monogamous structures.
And how do you prioritize inclusivity and intersectionality in your advocacy work for non-monogamy? And what steps do you take to ensure that marginalized communities are included and represented?
That's from my entire thing that I do has been about. I started everything because when I first began doing polyamory advocacy, it was because I joined a polyamory group in Toronto that had about 2,000 white people and 11 people of color. And though the city of Toronto, where half the population here is racialized community, that was so off. And I started a group for polyamorous people of color only because of that. And so to provide them resources in a safe space, where they didn't have to deal with the violence of whiteness, but also a place where they could talk about what relationality meant prior to colonialism, because a lot of us have been so far removed and have been assimilated, and our parents were assimilated, that it's forgotten. And us all doing the work together about remembering who we are, such an important work to be done. And that's how Decolonizing Love started, was that workshops where I would ask people, let's each one teach one. Tell me about how your grandmother loved. Talk to your grandma. Tell us some of the things. Share with us. And I started doing a lot of online stuff because I didn't see anybody. First of all, there are not many Black polyamory advocates out there, but there's none who are African, and those of us, and none who are Indigenous. And so we come from a very specific point of view, and I want to have a conversation with us. Sometimes just some videos are just for us, and and it's so much about unlearning and healing. Everything I do, I center, marginalized people, racialized people who are not from North America, who have a different take on things. And that's always something that I'm always cognizant about what do they need first and foremost? Because you know what? White polyamorous people get a lot of stuff, Their needs are constantly being met. What are our needs here? So I think about that all the time, that lens. And there's some things I know that is just going over the heads of white folks, and are they going to read this? I'm like, it's not for you.
We're planning on actually interviewing a lot of folks for our YouTube channel eventually. And I mean, it's like really our focus is really to bring a lot of voices that are not as represented in polyamorous circles, really to ensure that people feel seen. And that's one comment that we feel pretty proud about in a lot of the videos that we've done. It's we're constantly getting comments about thanking us that they feel seen, and we want to continue doing that because yes, as Millie mentioned, unfortunately, it's like the polyamorous community is still very white centered and white queer kind of, but also very straight as well. So it's really bringing out everybody, because there's so many different types of voices that we need to really highlight and amplify.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. I've been polyamorous for 4 years, but I like maybe like a year ago just start really researching and learning more about like the polyamorous community. And they're not like enough Black polyamorous communities out there, and it really sucks because it also makes people feel like, I remember even when I came out, when I told my cousin, and she's like, that's that white people shit.
Yeah.
I know. And the funny part, at that time, I didn't even know enough to combat her, because I told her 4 years ago. I didn't even know enough to to educate her, but just people who do identify as polyamorous maybe feeling like they don't have any space to go, because people are going to go, when they tell people, they're going to be like, oh, that's that white people shit. So having people to identify with that can be like, no, this is our thing. Like, we've been doing this. Like,
this thing has never been monogamous, ever. And we're one of the first people on the planet. I'm from East Africa, where humans came from. We've never been monogamous. So for us, somebody says this is a white people thing, I'm like, no, they brought that stuff to us.
Exactly. It's amazing how many. The crazy part is I am finding community, but I'm searching for it. Like, it's not like it's easy to find. Like, I'm diligently looking for community.
Queer people, there's more Black queer people than there are white queer people. That sounds so interesting. And so I just wonder if we're just, because if compulsory monogamy culture and heteronormativity is a product of white supremacy and everything, so the reverse would be true, right? Those who are most likely to be none of those things, we're going to be people of color, because we're further removed from that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I found with Africans, like no African has ever looked me twice for being, polyamorous, because I'm like, it comes from our culture anyways. You guys have seen examples. Your great grandmother did that, your grandmother did this. I'll know this.
It's crazy. Like, I still haven't told the rest of my family. My they probably know because I post, my social media, but like to outwardly say something, I haven't, because I don't even want to hear it.
Have to come out. Like, there's something when my African friends talk about how coming out is in this kind of direct way is a very white thing. And sometimes acceptance among Black people is a little bit more different. It maybe be like, I saw your social media post. That was cool. There's your acceptance, Like, no one's
right, exactly.
That is it.
When they just hit.
No one said anything to me about it.
Sorry?
I know my mom actively watches my social media and she never says, I think she might have commented on one post like, I don't like this. And I'm like, stop following me. And she hasn't said anything else since then. But no one has said anything to me about it. So
you good though.
There's actually something to say about the fact that we do have a lot of family members on our social media as well.
Yeah, we do.
And I do think that although I do think because of that, a lot of them do see our stories, have seen our posts, and haven't said anything. But when we would have these gatherings, it did open up a conversation. And I feel like for some of my cousins, they felt safer to kind of, have a conversation. They never said anything. They were kind of learning, without saying anything from the
back.
One of your cousins reached out to me, Nick.
Yeah. But I mean, it's I think there's something to be said that even if they're not liking it or they're not, if they're looking at it, it's goes back to about, it's with family members or friends, it's giving them time to digest and process this. And so they might not comment anything for like a year, but, slowly they would have gotten to accept it.
You know what I think we're all doing? I think we're all breaking generational curses, and also between our own families. Sometimes you're the first one that liberates everybody, and then somebody will be like, yeah, I did this, and my cousins, I always wanted to do this, and so we're all doing a good job.
Yeah,
I think that's the most exciting thing about it, especially like with being a Black woman who is polyamorous, is just breaking those generational curses and I mean, my family think everything's taboo with them. Like, you don't talk about it. If something bad happens to somebody in the family, it's not discussed. So just being free to be who I am, not being ashamed of it. I was always made to feel like, that's probably why I haven't told them yet. I was always made to feel like I was different, but like there's nothing different about me. I'm an amazing person, and just living in that truth, however that looks for me. I think that's the best part about being polyamorous, and then learning so much about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes among Black people, there's a respectability politics that's been forced in the system that we're in, that survival has meant trying to tout a certain line. So being able to live, you are your great grandparents' wildest dreams, that you're so free.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think that's amazing.
Yes. What specific services does Decolonizing Love offer, and how do you provide inclusive peer support and counseling for polyamorous individuals?
So this is something that we are in the middle of still expanding and shaping our services. So I can, really start by saying what we offer right now. Right now, we offer peer support. And I want to specify that peer support is very different from therapy. We are not, licensed therapists in any way, shape, or form. And we really specify that ahead of time when people book. And there was this discussion in the poly, community with a lot of poly educators about the difference between therapy and peer support. And I would see peer support more as kind of like coaching, relationship coaching, if you will. And a lot of our clients actually, they reach out to us usually when they're in distress mode and they need kind of like that immediate support. And we realize like a few themes with a lot of the help that we've been offering, such as like understanding what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. A lot of them don't know, especially those that have, it's multiple partners. Also, building relationship agreements, I think, is something that's been a common theme with a lot of our clients. How we are slowly expanding, however, we are in the midst of building a few courses for individuals on different themes. Also, coaching packages for different individuals, where we feel like a lot of times we don't have a lot of time to really get into the meat of things in just one session, and we feel like if we make it more topical, for example, managing your jealousy and have that over 4 sessions, or a relationship agreement and building that over 4 sessions. That's something that we're working on. We're working on, building, digital assets and templates for people. These are the things that are to come. And then Millie has just a bunch of blogs, articles that are ready to go. Once our website is
More
up
media.
and running, it's like more blog posts to kind of really communicate what we've learned. It's really about transmitting our knowledge and what we've learned throughout the years, and what our stance is on polyamory, decolonial love. As we say that it's with polyamory, there's so many ways that you can do polyamory, and the beauty about it is you're free to customize it however way you want. However, we also say that although there are many ways that you can do polyamory, there's also really bad ways to do polyamory, and that are really abusive, that do hurt a lot of people. And really our stance is really, how can we protect these people and minimize harm? And so this is the knowledge and education we want to really give away in the world, to really minimize that harm for a lot of these folks that have been burnt in polyamorous dynamics.
We started doing peer sessions because we used to get a lot of messages from people who don't have any friends who can talk to about polyamory. They didn't have anyone to talk to, any community around them. And a lot of therapists are not as polyamory informed. And there's one thing when you read about polyamory in school, when you studied it, but it's another thing when you've practiced polyamory and you have been for years. I've been polyamorous my entire life. We've been together 13 years, and most of my friends are polyamorous, so I have a large polyamory community. Not even many therapists have this amount of awareness of polyamory, and we people tell us about how their therapists would just say, "Oh, you should become monogamous." Actually, maybe that'll be better, which is just so ridiculous, absurd. And so we started offering this as just like, if you were to have an issue and you had a friend you could talk to, we wanted to be that person who could just be like, "Hey, you could just want to a voice where we could hear your concern as a friend." As people who, and like that's how our peer session started. And also because answering your question about inclusivity and how it is. I'm queer, I am Black, I am African, I'm non-binary, I'm an immigrant. So I come to polyamory in a way that I'm able to talk to various types of people that they may not be able to find other peer support workers out there who could talk to them from that angle. And I want to be able to offer for anybody out there who might be hurting, who might have no one to talk to. And it's been beautiful to see the kinds of people that reach out to us who have not been able to talk to anybody. And then just how in an hour, just being able to just resolve so much just by being heard. And as you said, being understood is so important. And just being able to be understood, been so... Seeing
that anxiety
like
go down at the end. And
there's smiles on their faces afterwards. It's so been... You understand how important that is, that people don't have an option. But also, was the other thing that I wanted to say. Sorry, just 1 second. Also, sometimes people have actually contacted us, which is we had a girl from Eastern Europe contact us to ask us questions about polyamory and the politics and economics of it, which I thought was the coolest ass, thing that somebody could do. Because once again, if you are thinking about this and you just want to,
if you're in a country where it's really taboo to talk about it, and you don't. No, I don't know if that was the case with this individual, but I mean, I can certainly imagine a person living in a country where it's just talking about polyamory is really bad and you're ostracized. I mean, to actually talk with somebody from across the world that has that experience that you resonate with,
exactly.
That's something to talk to where you cannot talk to anybody.
I also think a lot of polyamory information that you see is often very one-on-one. There's not, sometimes it's not accessible, this sort of more in-depth and talking about the politics and also the economics of it. And so if you're trying to look for that, who are you going to talk to? It's not like you can use a polyamory course in university.
Yeah.
Right?
Not yet.
So and I just think it's like, so that we're able to just offer that sort of information to people on all these different levels is what we do. Why we do what we do.
What are some common misconceptions about polyamory, and how do you address them in your advocacy work?
Oh my God, how long do we have?
We've done so many videos on polyamory misconceptions.
Polyamory is open cheated.
Yes, straight off the bat, polyamory is cheating.
Polyamory is sexist. It's a way. Polyamory, people have commitment issues.
Polyamory is manipulative.
Polyamory is polygamy.
Oh yeah, polygamy. There's that confusion with that.
There's just it's like there's
polyamory is just for sex.
Polyamory is white.
Polyamory is white. Polyamory is for people who can't commit.
And we debunk them. We sort of like talk about how it is that compulsory monogamy culture. Why does compulsory monogamy culture rely on this myth?
Right.
So, for example, the myth that it's a way for especially men to exploit women so that they can have multiple partners. Like I talk about how it's usually women that open up their relationships.
Yes.
It's not usually, if you look at educators in polyamory, they're mostly women. And that's because patriarchy created monogamy culture as a way to be able to control women's sexuality and making sure that a man could pass on his particular genes, and so the land would go specifically to his children. That when we look up prior to the agricultural revolution, most societies lived in these tribal community groups, small groups where everybody's children were raised together and all resources were raised together. Yeah. Nobody cared which woman slept with whom because all the resources were shared. But because of capitalism, because of patriarchy, we have monogamy actually. And I
was just going to add other things that we've received also. It's polyamory is not natural. Which is something we try to debunk as well. We do. And especially recently also about hierarchy. In our hierarchical polyamory.
Hierarchy is natural.
Hierarchy is natural. And therefore we should be hierarchical in polyamory.
Yes. So we debunk that through using science. We debunk that, anthropological research, coming from cultures that are non-Western, that can be like, there's actually other worldviews out there.
Yeah. Right.
We feel that, we feel that a lot of the comments or a lot of the misconceptions, they really come from a person's own worldview, right? If it's a North American person who's responding, they're going to come with their own mindset and their own worldview in a North American lens, not recognizing that polyamory has also existed in other countries. There's other histories of the world.
And existed on Turtle Island prior to European invasion.
Right. There's
still this in some.
There's so many.
We debunk that in so many different ways, and it's constant. It's a constant battle because be the naysayers and everything. But I have seen the last year things change.
Yeah.
So the advocacy is working.
Absolutely.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on the impact of polyamory on mental health and well-being, and how do you support individuals who may be struggling with mental health challenges in their non-monogamous relationships?
That's a great question. It makes me so emotional when I get messages from people about them finally figuring out who they are and how much of a burden that's been lifted off them, that they're realizing that why they never felt happy in so many relationships and what was going wrong. And it just that they were not monogamous, or that they could not do the relationship escalator, and they thought that this is a script, and if you don't able to climb up the relationship escalator, and the relationship escalator, actually you're very good at explaining the relationship escalator, go.
Yes, that the relationship escalator is really that we have this script that in monogamy, we have this untold script that there's a process, and the end goal of that script, the epitome of that you've won the game of relationships, is the marriage, nesting together with your 2.5 kids.
You have a legacy behind.
And yes, you leave a legacy. It's like the goal is to reach that, to win the game. And the escalator is really like you're attaining each level to get to that objective. So first, when you date, then you sleep together, then you live together, then you get married, then you have kids, and it's like leveling up every time. And where polyamory put this whole escalator on the head or blows it up is like,
we're a landscape.
It's a landscape.
Right.
You do not have to do this with one person. First of all, you can customize in, instead of a what's the word I'm looking for in a restaurant. It's the opposite of instead of the menu du jour, where it's where you get everything picked for you. It's like it's an a la carte type of thing where you pick and choose what for your relationships. For example, I can have one partner that I marry, but another partner that I have kids with.
And you don't have to live with anybody.
And I don't have to live with anybody, or I can live with another partner, and just really construct that depending on the dynamic that you have with each individual.
Being able to free people to explore who they are, and given it's almost like telling people you're okay just who you are, and it's society, you're trying to fit this box, you don't have to. That helps alleviate a lot for a lot of people. It frees them. And the other ways that we get to talk about mental health is when people are unpacking jealousy, and we talk about the different attachment styles that might get triggered more by being in open relationships. And that's something we take a lot into concern, and talking about I'm neurodivergent, and
I'm pretty much as well, kind of.
And a lot of polyamorous people actually are. And I was talking to actually a polyamorous friend the other day, about why is it that neurodivergent people and polyamory, why does that intersect so much? And it's talking about how, we're the ones who are more likely to not follow social script.
Yeah, exactly.
Mostly likely to question. And our personality is going to be based more on our own value system and own logical deduction. We also get to be able to show the different ways that we get to be representative of for neurodivergent people, and very supportive of them, that we can't fit this box. Polyamory is just so beautiful for people who are different, asexual, people who are aromantic. You see a lot more people who are asexual and romantic want to be polyamorous because if they're with somebody who is alloromantic or allo in other ways, is that they can still be able to have those needs met. Polyamory is good for your mental health.
You get more people, like you said, that satisfies different needs. One person should not be responsible.
And I think, I don't know who we were speaking to, but there have been many cases where there have been some polyamorous folk that did have a mental illness and didn't want to burden one partner. And that was one of the reasons why they were polyamorous, because
they wanted to. Okay.
They wanted to, to be able to spread. They needed a lot of support. But if they were monogamous, that would burden just one person, and that would be very taxing on that one person. And so, removing that a little bit and spreading that along among all their partners, then all their partners, it can help and contribute to the well-being and mental health of that individual. And I thought that was very beautiful, hearing that from that person.
Exactly. I have there's this person I follow on Instagram, Remodeled Love, and she always talks about how no one ever questions when you have multiple friends. And we have multiple friends to fulfill different needs. Why should it be any different with other relationships that we have? No one questions if you have multiple children. No one questions if you hang out with different family members. But as soon as you open it up to romantic relationships, then it's an issue. But why is that? Because each individual person that you have a relationship with, they satisfy a different need for you, and that should be okay.
Yep, I totally agree with that. This idea of the soul, that we're all incomplete until we meet our other half, and then
and it just goes back to the need for community, and not assuming that it's just our romantic partners that should be our community.
Exactly. As a relationship coaches and advocates for polyamory, what do you see as the future of non-monogamous relationships, and how do you plan to continue promoting inclusivity and diversity in love and relationships?
We believe the future of non-monogamous relationships is one that is increasingly diverse, inclusive, and normalized. So as society becomes more aware of the limitations and harms of compulsory monogamy, more people are exploring alternative, relationship structures that prioritize consent, communication, and mutual respect. So we envision a future where non-monogamy is seen as a valid and viable option for anyone seeking to express love and connection in their own way. We plan to continue advocating for non-monogamy as a legitimate and valid relationship choice. This includes, as we talked about before, challenging harmful stereotypes and assumptions about non-monogamy, as well as highlighting the diverse ways that non-monogamous relationships can manifest. So I think we've already discussed that a little bit. And we also plan to continue educating ourselves and others about the intersections of non-monogamy with other identities and experiences. And I think that's really important. Millie is constantly reading new books and learning, and we're constantly having discussion. We have these 2-3 hour sessions and everything about different theories or hypotheses on polyamory and non-monogamy. And so ultimately our goal is to really help create a world where everyone has the freedom and support to express love and connection in the ways that feel most authentic and fulfilling to them, regardless of societal norms or expectations.
Love that so much. I think that non-monogamy is the future. I always say that I'm teaching for the next generation. And I think that we're in this very crucial time with the Anthropocene and late capitalism. We're seeing the center collapse. And we're seeing great changes happening. And it doesn't surprise me that polyamory has grown particularly after the pandemic, where people stay at home, go on TikTok, start to have some time finally, because capitalism was taking all our time, to be sit down and be like, what kind of world do we want? Who are we? And be able to connect and rethink about who they are, and how many people have become non-monogamous and started going towards polyamory. And I think it's because of that love ethos in polyamory, about love being rooted in freedom. And I think love is going to be the answer, and how we're going to be able to overcome this new era that's coming. And it's going to have to come back to community, less individualism.
Yeah.
That is what I see the future happening.
What advice do you have for individuals exploring non-monogamous relationships?
My advice for individuals exploring non-monogamous relationships is to approach it with patience, number one, open-mindedness, and a commitment to communication. Non-monogamy is not a one-size-fits-all solution, and there are many ways, to practice it. So we didn't go a little bit into all the different ways, but there are. And to take the time to explore what feels right for you and your partners. And don't be afraid to adjust as you go. I think Millie and I have adjusted in a lot of ways, and tried different things and realized what didn't work for us. And I think that's important for everybody to realize that nothing's set in stone, and as long as you're constantly renegotiating and communicating, that you can adjust as you go. It's also important to prioritize honest and transparent communication, both with your partner and with yourself. This means being willing to have difficult conversations, owning your feelings, and actively listening to others, really making others feel heard, as we talked about before. And finally, remember that non-monogamy is not a magic fix for relationship issues, and it requires just as much work and intentionality as any other type of relationship. A lot of times people want to jump right into it, and they're having issues. And we usually tell people polyamory is going to amplify all your relationship issues. So it's really about being really intentional when you go into it, and having the right mindset and approach. Non-monogamy can be a fulfilling and enriching way to experience love and connection, but it has to be done responsibly.
Yeah.
I also always tell people is that I really focus on the research part. Really sit with yourself about what you want, who you truly are, and have self-awareness. I think is so important in this, about why are you doing this, who are you, what do you like, what do you see your future as, and really separating the scripts that you've been given by compulsory monogamy culture. But also polyamory can be very dogmatic. Try to figure out who you are beyond all these sounds and all these voices.
Yeah.
And everything, and it's going to be a journey, and it's a constant journey that you're going to be learning about who you are within this all, and also research all the different ways of being monogamous and all the different tips that people are given. It'll maybe help you understand who you are better. And what we always tell people is, please find community.
Yes.
Theory great and all, TikToks are great and all, but there's nothing quite like seeing a real life polyamorous relationships and community with those people. Real model. There's nothing that can really replace that as much.
Yeah.
And it'll teach you so much, because you've been programmed by compulsory monogamy culture your entire life. You've seen the models growing up, your parents, family members, school, TV, movies. You are going to need to undo that. And, you learn a lot about love and relationships by your parents. You're going to need to replace a little bit of that.
Right.
Have models of non-monogamy in your real life.
Exactly. How do you guys prioritize communication, boundaries, and consent in your polyamorous relationships? And what strategies do you use to maintain healthy and respectful dynamics among all partners involved?
I would give 5 really good strategies, and Millie, you can obviously add more to these strategies. These are obviously not exhaustive, but definitely things that speak to me personally. Regular check-ins. That's my partner and I always make time for regular check-ins. I know it's Millie and I, every time I go back and forth, between partners, we kind of have these sessions where we just check in, reconnect.
We just had one today.
Yes, we had one today. So, it's where we openly discuss our feelings, needs, concerns. I think it's really important. Second thing is honesty and transparency. So really, we prioritize, we prioritize me and Millie, and, with my other partners, is honesty and transparency in all of our interactions, even when it's difficult. It's really learning to have those hard conversations, because if you're not able to, it's going to come out and it's going to explode. And it's really being really upfront about your desires, your needs, your boundaries, your limitations, and being willing to listen and respond to these as much as possible, and being willing to negotiate. The third thing is really respect for boundaries. We take each other's boundaries very, very, very seriously, and we respect them without judgment.
That's very important.
And we're very keen and specific that these are boundaries and not rules. There's a big difference between boundaries and rules, and we're really specific that we're not trying to control our other partners, but really protect ourselves, and being really empathetic and understanding of everybody's boundaries. That's really important. Fourth thing is consensual decision making. So we make decisions as a group, and that's especially important. And as a group, I really mean any decisions that affect other people in the polycule must be had with them. It is extremely hierarchical and very destructive to make decisions just between 2 people and then let the rest of the polycule know. They need to be heard. They need to be included in the discussions and have agency. And there needs to be a focus on consensus and mutual agreement. So we take the time to discuss and negotiate issues that arise, and we're always open to adjusting our plans as needed. Everybody needs to feel heard and feel like they have a say. The fifth thing is something that is super important. And it's we take it seriously also as polyeducators. All because we're polyeducators doesn't mean that we know everything there is to know. And so it's that continuous learning for everybody, for ourselves, but anybody embarking in polyamory, it's this continuous learning about what is the most ethical thing to do, what is the right thing to do, how to communicate, but also continuous learning about yourself and about your partners to really gain that deeper understanding. And so that just makes those conversations a lot better. The importance is it's like that we stay informed, aware, and responsive to each other's needs constantly. So I think that those would be my 5 things. Do you have anything to add?
That's brilliant. I have very little to add to that. Well, the only thing I have to add to that is that me and Nick also as a way to ensure that we're keeping to our boundaries, but it's also a great mental exercise in knowing what our boundaries are. We have a 5-page contract, and it's a
relationship agreement.
A relationship agreement.
Contract seems a little
contract agreement, whatever you want to go. They're the same thing, anyways. Yeah. And we have one for the whole polycule agreements around things like privacy, safe sex, and we're very detailed. Hence why it's 5 pages. And we don't like to figure out. We want to be able to not have surprises later about where our values were, of what is much misunderstanding. With our 4th date, this is how we knew we were so well together. Is that we went to bookstore and we took out a book, and it was like 1,000 questions to ask before you're married, which is just the closest we could have about figuring out boundaries. Yeah.
No, we're not married.
We're not married.
But they were good questions.
They were a great question. We're like, let's go. Not many people on a 4th date would do this, but we're those kind of people. So we went through all these.
Right.
And it's funny, those questions were actually highlighted the issues that we would probably have, which ended up being the only sticky points we've ever had.
Yes.
And when we opened up our relationship, we created a relationship agreement. And it was just, at that point, it was just like half a page long.
Yeah.
But then recently, because Nick is living between 2 partners, we decided to more thoroughly create agreements for everybody to now meet some of the concerns that have been brought up.
Yes.
So because we want to be we're very anti-hierarchical polyamory, but also me and Nick at the same time are entangled in so many ways after 13 years. So we had this 5-page agreement to just be like, how do we really think about this if this involves this other person? Because now this might come up. Let's just figure out how this would be situated. And it can be updated every single year.
So it's always about nothing set in stone. Everything's a living, breathing thing that mutates and grows and shapes and changes and stuff like that. And it's making sure.
And it can be negotiated anytime.
Yeah, and exactly. Going back to, it's that book on 1,000, 1,000 questions. I still remember one of the things and it's so relevant today. And I thought, I didn't think much of it then, but now I realize great question. Nobody thinks about this.
One is it?
A great first date question is, what temperature do you like to keep your house?
God.
What temperature do you like to keep the house? Because honestly, that has become a point of contention in our relationship for 13 years.
That's hilarious.
The first thing he did when he came back home, he went straight to the thermometer and he's like, why?
When I leave the house to go to my other partner's house, Millie cranks up the heat all the time. She's like, thank God Nick's gone.
How do you recommend individuals who are interested in learning more about non-monogamy access resources?
Let's start with, first, there's our channels.
There's a lot of books out there. More Than Two actually has a resource guide. It's not the so Franklin Vogt is a bit of a problematic person. Eve Rickard, who wrote the book with him, is a person who she wrote most of the book, and she's asked, please don't cancel the works because that would be canceling her too, and she was victimized by Franklin. So on the More Than Two, Nick is out here bringing a book. On the More Than Two website, it's, I think, the most thorough resources you have of all the books out there that exist, all the podcasts out there that exist, videos, etc. on polyamory and non-monogamy. So we also have on our page, I've been asked this question. So I did put a list of resources of what on every topic. If you're LGBT and polyamorous, which books are particularly, if you're looking for that type of material. If you want to look trauma-informed books like Polysecure, I did list all that as well. It's amazing right now. There's books coming out every single year. So if you were to go to Amazon, independent books will be even better, and look up polyamory literature, you will find that all media nowadays does have resources, podcasts, etc. like yours.
We try to, in terms of books, we try to keep our recommended book list updated on our link in bio. But other than just books and podcasts, obviously there's some great podcasts out there.
TikTok.
There's TikTok, Instagram. There's some
Yeah.
great poly educators and influencers. But as you know, Millie said, it's like being able to talk with actual people
The most important.
is the most important. So finding a community in, you know, wherever you live, if you live in a big city, that is so much better because you can find other, and there's poly meetups, you know, going on meetup.com, there's probably some poly meetups there, and really reaching out to people.
This actually reminds me of something. I once met this woman at a polyamory conference, and she had created an Excel spreadsheet of every polyamory community in North America. This was years ago, and I unfortunately lost her link. But she had, and this is years ago, and she had hundreds and hundreds of links to community groups all across North America. It'll be a lot. We'll be able to hire somebody for that. Or create a Discord group,
or make it collaborative document. Yeah. It's kind of like a Wikipedia page.
If anybody wants to steal this idea and do the homework for us,
go ahead. Do it.
Okay. Do you guys have any final thoughts you wanted to share with the listeners?
So I think the final thought that I have for all listeners is to really remind yourself and to know that love is not a finite resource, and neither is the capacity to love. We've been taught to believe that we must choose between loving deeply and loving wildly, but in truth, the two are not mutually exclusive. And so, decolonial love challenges us to dismantle the systems of possession and control that have limited our understanding of what love can be. And so when we embrace the abundance of love, we create space for deeper connection, growth, and radical transformation. So let us love fiercely and let that love be a force for liberation and healing in ourselves, our communities, and the world.
Yes. I have nothing more. It's beautiful.
Yes. Thank you so much, Millie and Nick. I really appreciate you guys for coming to join me today. Thank you for joining us today for this episode of the Unapologetic Love podcast. We hope that this conversation with Millie and Nick has provided valuable insights into the world of polyamory and the importance of decolonizing love. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share with anyone who may benefit from these conversations. And as always, stay unapologetically you.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.